John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. And, of course, John's appearance on the show brought to you by Gino, the winemaker's choice for 50 years. Visit Gino Pinto on the White Horse Pike in Hamilton, online at ginopinto.com. Gino, the winemaker's choice for 50 years, John. And the Eagles reached the midway 8-1, but they do it by dominating. I mean, we did countdown to kickoff yesterday. I don't think anybody that was listening or anybody that would have prognosticated that game yesterday would have said blowout. I forget 50-burger, blowout style. How surprising was it the way they manhandled that Denver outfit?
Oh, it was very surprising. And then you add into it the late scratch of Zach Ertz, who's obviously the top receiver on this team. So you're going against the top-ranked defense in football coming in. And this isn't, this isn't a fly-by-night group. They've been together for a long time. It wasn't somebody who just caught lightning for a year and was good defensively through, 7 or 8 games. This defense has been one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL for years and years and years, and they put a 50 spot on them without Zach Ertz. This team is playing with such confidence. Obviously, it starts with the quarterback. Doug Peterson talked about him making others around him better. I think that's nowhere is that better exemplified than Corey Clement, who I wrote about on the website. He's, touched it 51 times this year. He scored 5 touchdowns. I mean, confidence means a lot to players, and this team is just playing with unbelievable confidence right now.
We asked earlier in the show. We got a ton of reaction on it. We had really good response from the listeners and the callers today. What is standing out about why this team is 8-1?
Well, I mean, it might be the easy question, but it's not a cop-out. It's the quarterback. When you have that quarterback who's a superstar in this league, and I'm going to use that word, he is a superstar. People keep saying he's going to be a superstar. No, he's there. He's there. He's going to be the MVP of this league. That's how confident I am in saying that. With Aaron Rodgers down, and he's not going to be in the conversation, Carson Wentz is going to be the MVP of this league. And when you have the best player at the most important position, you're going to win a lot of football games. And that's why the Eagles are 8-1. Now, there's other parts to it. You can go all the way back to the beginning of the season when we talked about the NFC East. I said it from day one. This is the most well-rounded team in the division because they're also good defensively. They can beat you that way. And they're always good on special teams with Dave Fitt, and they can beat you that way. There are very few teams in this league that could beat you with all 3 phases on any given weekend. The Eagles are one of them.
John, we talked about it yesterday on the Countdown to Kickoff show. One thing that I think is just underrated about this team's success at 8-1, and it came out again yesterday, they tackle. I mean, they simply will tackle you. Their defense, they have a lot of the same personnel on defense. The corners are different. These corners tackle. Those corners in the past did not. And that's a big difference in why this team has had success, because they were close in a lot of games last year, but it was always some big play. It was always, the running back slipped out of a couple of tackles, and, you don't see that anymore.
Yeah, and I think the one time you did see it was in Kansas City. They had a little bit of trouble tackling that day, and that's their one loss of the season. So, yeah, I mean, the corner specifically, Jalen Mills, is just, one thing you can say about him is he's a hard worker. He's always willing to stick his nose into it. Rasul Douglas, as a big corner, a rookie, might have trouble covering at times, but he's certainly not afraid in run support. And obviously Patrick Robinson, I talked about, he's the most underappreciated signing of the offseason. He's been tremendous all year. So those corners have been great in run support. And then Malcolm Jenkins. If you ask me who the defensive MVP on this team is at the midway point, I'm going Malcolm Jenkins. Now, he's not the best player on that defense. There's a lot of good players, and it starts with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham up front. But his versatility, you think about what he's been able to do for Jim Schwartz this year, obviously at his normal position of safety. When Ronald Darby goes down, he's got the ability to play in the slot, in the big nickel, they call it, when Patrick Robinson is concussed. And then Jordan Hicks goes down, and they're using this dime package, which really isn't a dime package because he's playing linebacker. He's playing nickel linebacker. So he's essentially played 3 different positions this season at a high level, and that to me is the definition of valuable. And that's why he's been the most valuable defensive player on this team. But, he's a safety tackling like a linebacker.
John, I saw a lot of Michael Kendricks yesterday. I saw a lot of Nigel Bradham yesterday. Are you saying then that Malcolm Jenkins helps them elevate their play?
Well, I think Malcolm helps everybody. Now, those are the nickel linebackers. I'm not trying to say that Malcolm is consistently playing nickel linebacker. He's not. It's still the majority of the time it's Nigel and Michael Kendricks. But at times they use this dime package where 6 defensive backs are on the field. And when that happens, Malcolm is the one playing next to Nigel Bradham at linebacker. And it enables you to throw a different look at opposing offenses. And, hey, sometimes it's really difficult to figure out what you want to do because half of the time you're not realizing whether Michael's on the field, a legitimate linebacker, or Malcolm's on the field, whereas maybe you could take advantage of that in the run game. But the Eagles have been so effective using all these different packages, it's tough to get a beat on it. It's tough to game plan for it and understand when it's actually happening during the game.
Let's go to the offense a little bit because I want to talk about RPO and that play, the first touchdown that Doug, I know, spoke about it today, that they execute and practice that play a lot. And you don't just roll out of bed. That kind of thing is the deal that you can hope that you get the right alignment. The guy's going to bite. But you're talking about some all-pro corners that are out there in Talib and Harris, and they bit hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, I mean, specifically on that play, which was the touchdown to Jeffrey, think about not only that's about the prettiest play you're going to see in the modern day NFL, but beyond that, think about the players. They kind of got on the hook. One was Von Miller with the zone read look at the mesh point. He didn't know what to do. And the other was Aqib Talib looking in the backfield. And all of a sudden, Alshon Jeffrey is streaking behind him, and you got a touchdown. So, yeah, those aren't run-of-the-mill players. Those aren't bad football players. One's going to the Hall of Fame. He's already there. And Von Miller and the others got a chance. I mean, to be that effective against that kind of defense and those kinds of players, it just speaks to the fact of, as I said, how much confidence this team is playing with offensively. And it all starts with the quarterback.
Well, since you brought up Von Miller, too, there was a lot of talk about him going in. And, yes, he did get his strip sack late in the game, but I know on that second touchdown.
I thought he was offside, by the way.
A lot of people do. In the picture evidence, there's a lot of still frames I see out there that looks like he might have got a little bit of an advantage. But they fooled him not once but twice. That second touchdown, the one that went to Clement, they basically – how did they use Von Miller against himself?
Well, anytime you have a great edge rusher, and especially – and that's what zone read stuff can do for you. That's what option stuff can do for you. Now, the Eagles, and this is maybe a question moving forward because there's been a lot of effective zone read quarterbacks at times. I remember Colin Kaepernick in the playoffs making Clay Matthews look like a top, set the NFL rushing record. And ultimately you get to the Super Bowl and the Ravens game plan with Terrell Suggs to beat him up. And he's never been the same player since. So that's where you kind of get into the difficulty of running that kind of stuff consistently at this level because you don't want your quarterback hit. And the Eagles can't afford, we've already discussed Carson Wentz is getting hit too much this season. The last thing you want to do is increase that. So, but the thing Doug Peterson has done beautifully is he doesn't use it a lot. He uses it very sparingly in key situations, and you've seen it work time and time again. And that's the key to it. You have to be very, very judicious with it.
You think Doug is coming to his own as a play caller, and he talked a little bit about today, confidence in play calling, but the comparison, what's your comparison of Doug from year one or even the beginning of this season to now with the confidence level he has calling plays out there?
Yeah, I think he's always been a pretty good play caller because obviously he learned from Andy Reid. And if you look at probably the two most complicated offenses in the NFL right now are Kansas City and Philadelphia, there's obvious correlations there. Doug is basically copying Andy's offense. And I think he's good calling plays. The issue becomes, and I've always talked about the theory of a CEO coach. And when you call plays, obviously it takes your mind away from maybe the bigger picture on a particular Sunday, and that's where time management mistakes can come into it. So I think that's always been the bigger issue with Doug. By the nature of the fan, he's very aggressive. If you go on it, if you go for it on 4th and 8 and you don't make it, you're going to be labeled a doofus. And that's just the nature of it. But as far as devising plays, calling plays, you see it. You saw it with the RPOs you mentioned, Pete, and how pretty they are when they work. I mean, nobody is running better stuff than the Eagles right now.
John, let's take a look at some of the individual stories in the bye week here. What's the plan for Ronald Darby moving forward here? He kind of indicated, I think he tweeted out that he's, for all intents and purposes, sounded like he was tweeting that, hey, I'll be back when we come back. Do you get the sense that Darby will be a full go when they're ready to go for Dallas?
Yeah, I do. Doug pretty much confirmed he was almost a full go this week, and I've talked about it for a couple of weeks. He's been back at practice, and I think if the Eagles weren't as good as they were, he'd already be back on the field. But the fact that they are 8-1, the fact that Jalen Mills and Patrick Robinson, Rasul Douglas have held up so well, there was no need to push him back on the field. Now I think you have to look at it from the other perspective, and I never thought I'd be bringing this up, and that's the fact that who do you want to sit down? Obviously, it's going to be Rasul, but, I mean, do you want Patrick Robinson playing less? I don't know. I don't know if you want that at this point. It's almost you got to play the hot hand, but there's so much talent with Ronald Darby as compared to any other corner on this team. Probably the only one comparable would be the other injured corner, and that's Sidney Jones. But these guys are playing at such a high level, I'm not sure you want to take them off the field.
Yeah, they're going to be an interesting spot. And then you mentioned Sidney Jones. I mean, they drafted Sidney Jones in the second round thinking, hey, this guy's going to be a big part. They got Mills, they got Douglas, they've got Darby, they've got Jones, they've got Robinson. I mean, they're going to have a lot of decisions to make. This is almost like, dare I say, Asamoah, Cromartie, Samuel. That didn't work out very well. Never mind. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Doug admitted today that they only had 5 running backs because of Ertz, so last-minute change there. So so who's the odd man out here, and how much more involved do you anticipate Ajayi being when they come back for Dallas?
Yeah, I think more and more incrementally, he's going to be the bell cow back on this team as he gets up to speed. He's going to be the running back. And we'll see how quickly it gets to that point. But you kind of saw on the 46-yard run, he brings something to this offense they didn't have before, an element of explosiveness. You talk about a guy who's been able to run for 200 yards in this league 3 different times. It's an improvement from a talent standpoint, so they're going to try to get him up to speed as quickly as possible, and I think you're going to see his touches increase from week to week. But clearly the odd man out is Wendell Smallwood because LeGarrett's going to be part of that rotation. Corey Clement, you saw him yesterday with the hat trick, and then Kenyon Barner, because he's not only the kick returner, but he's also a punt returner. Wendell's very good at kick returns, so but he can't return punts. So that makes him a person you have to dress on game day. And unfortunately, it becomes a numbers game for Smallwood. And barring injury, he's going to be the guy who doesn't dress.
Yep, and by the way, the carry that Smallwood got yesterday, I know it was late in the game, but he burned off the left side and picked up some big yards there. So they have depth. They've got a lot of talent there. What is something, going into this second half of the season? Because let's be honest here, they really haven't played a team other than Kansas City that jumps off the page, and the Chiefs beat them. Now, the Chiefs fell on some tough times, but there's not really another team on that schedule that jumps off the page. They're going to have a stretch with at Seattle, at the Rams, the Giants on the road, the Raiders on Christmas night, and the Cowboys to close out the season. So there's still a ways to go before they're smooth sailing here. What is something that could, creep its ugly head and derail this season?
Well, from a talent standpoint, you don't want to say it, but I think we all know what could derail this team. It's the same thing that derailed the Green Bay Packers. But you can't legislate injuries in this league. There's nothing you can do about that. You got to go out and play. And in some ways, football is about attrition and who suffers the least amount. Mm-hmm. The Eagles have already had plenty of injuries, but there are some you can't overcome. And we all know who that starts with. But other than that, I just don't see this team going away. I really don't. As I said, they are so well-rounded. They're playing with confidence. You mentioned the schedule and who's on it and who they've beaten. I would turn that on the other side of the coin and ask, who is great? Who is a big win? The Eagles are the best team in the NFL. There aren't a lot of teams in this league that don't have significant flaws. There's a lot of teams with good records on the NFC side, but they all have issues, whether it's, Minnesota's winning games with Case Keenum. The Saints are winning games, and they've got a much improved defense, but it's still not a good defense by any stretch of the imagination. The Rams are probably the most improved team in football, but I don't know anybody who's going to be counting on them in January and feel good about it. So at some point I say, well, hey, the Eagles can't beat anybody better than them because nobody's better than them.
Hey, John, we can't let you go without a question right up my alley, which is what's the kicking situation going to be? Because Sturgis is set to come off the IR. Is there going to be a kicking controversy?
No, I don't think so. Jake Elliott is their guy. Obviously, he's missed the extra points for 2 consecutive weeks. He's missed 3 overall. Now, I think it was brushed off a little bit because of the weather in San Francisco. It's more concerning. You see this all over the league, though. There's a lot of missed extra points. And if you think about a 33-yard field goal, it's almost a gimme, and it always is. But it becomes a mental sort of hurdle for these guys. And sometimes with kickers, it's more mental than physical, and he's going through something. But they're not giving up on a kid who's a rookie that's cost-effective with that leg strength, that's already blasted so many 50-yard field goals, a 61-yard field goal. Caleb Sturgis is, even if he's healthy, he's going to stay on injured reserve.
You can make the argument, John. You can make the argument, John, that Elliott kick against the Giants springboarded this whole run.
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's a bad football team. So to lose that game, and you remember the defense was leaking oil after all the injuries in the secondary at the time. To lose that game would have been catastrophic. Blowing the lead and being able to kick that field goal. So, yeah, you can make that argument. And, hey, they want Jake Elliott to be their kicker for the long-term future. Now, they can keep Caleb around as insurance for the offseason. And if Jake struggles down the stretch, maybe they'll revisit it. but I think, Caleb Sturgis is Wally Pipp in this scenario.
John McMullen at JF McMullen on Twitter. And don't forget, check out his national column at 973ESPN.com and all his Eagles coverage there as well. We'll be talking a lot about the Eagles in the national perspective throughout the course of this week with the Eagles on the bye, but plenty of bye week coverage right now at 973ESPN.com. John, we will catch up tomorrow with plenty more on this 8-1 Eagles bunch. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thank you, guys.